What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to an episode of the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. It's Preview Friday, as you guys all know. We always have a guest on from the other side. This week it is the Los Angeles Chargers, and so that always means my good pal Alex Katson is on board. He was here last year with us when the Steelers took on the Chargers. He's here again with us. Mr. Katson, how's it going, man?
Doing well, man. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. FYI for you guys, there may be developments later in this week that I will not cover. I am filming this on Tuesday because I am going out to LA Thursday night into Friday. So that is why we were recording this. So as of today, the Chargers do at least have a new offensive lineman. So I want to start there,
Yeah,
Alex,
it's you,
because
buddy. Get on the field.
yeah, you're right. It's me. They traded for me because the tackle room. I mean, Bobby Hart got hurt. Joe Alt's down for the year. That's after Rashawn Slater got hurt earlier in training camp, and it's just been a bloodbath for these Chargers tackles. Now they trade for Trevor Penning, who's played left guard, but I'm assuming is going to play tackle for them, considering how much they have just been battered all across the line this year. So talk to me about this Chargers offensive line that has been nothing short of an adventure with their injuries and what has happened when they haven't had good offensive line play and how Justin Herbert, Greg Roman, and them are trying to work around this offensive line, because I think this is the story of the game, considering the performance the Steelers are coming off of where they really kicked butt up front against a really good Colts offensive line.
Yeah, so on Sunday, if Trevor Penning does in fact start at left tackle, the Chargers will start their, I think it's sixth and seventh offensive tackles at this point this season. You mentioned Rashawn Slater is injured. Joe Alt, who was going to start at right tackle, but then shifted over to left tackle when Slater got injured. He's out for the year now with an ankle injury. Your backup right tackle, Trey Pipkins, should play in this game, but he's dealing with a knee issue. And then after that, you're Austin Deculus, who they traded for from the Texans before the season started. He might start at left tackle on Sunday. It just kind of depends on how Penning comes along after, they just traded for him today as we're recording this. So Deculus might start. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup with an injury as well. Jamari Sawyer is the next guy after that. He's dealing with a knee injury, but he came in for Joe Alt at left tackle last week. So he might get the start at left tackle this week, depending on how everything goes. And then, like you mentioned, Bobby Hart is your right tackle on the other side. He gets injured. He's probably going to IR with a groin issue. And so luckily Pipkins is healthy enough to play. But it's just been a bloodbath this year for the Chargers. You add in the fact that Mekhi Becton is kind of in and out of the lineup pretty much every week with something new every time. And so Foster Sorrell has played a lot at right guard. And so really your guess as to who the five guys will be for the Chargers offensive line on Sunday is as good as mine, because we just don't know, because all of them are liable to get injured, 10 snaps into the game, except for Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman. They've played every snap of every game so far this season. At left guard and center, they've been stalwarts, as Jim Harbaugh likes to say. But outside of those, those three guys, that unit has really been an issue. And I think, in terms of how that's going to affect the game, right? When Joe Alt has played this season, the Chargers have a positive EPA per play. They're the sixth best offense in the league when Joe Alt's on the field. When Joe Alt is off the field, they have a negative EPA per play. They're one of the worst. They're not one of the worst offensive units, but they're they fall completely down from sixth best offense in the league. And so without Alt in the lineup, you're going to get a more middling version of this Chargers offense. Excuse me. I do think they'll try to get the ball out a little bit faster, especially if Penning is the one that ends up playing, as they just try to ease him in a little bit. It's not like Penning hasn't been playing. He's been playing for the Saints. But like you mentioned, he's mostly been playing guard. He's not been playing tackle. If he's going to play on Sunday, it is going to be at tackle. I don't think they're going to plug him in at guard, mostly because Mekhi Becton is supposed to practice this week, so that there shouldn't be a guard spot for him to fill in at. Might be the swing guard or something if he doesn't end up starting at tackle. But I do think that they made that trade for him to be the left tackle for the rest of the season, and they're just waiting for him to get all the way prepped with this team. And so we'll see if that's this Sunday or if it's next week or if it's after the bye. But yeah, it's going to be definitely, I think it's the main thing of this game, right? Like you said, the Steelers are coming off a very good performance against this Colts offensive line that is worlds better than what the Chargers have been putting out there this season. And so if the Steelers pass rush is able to get home, which I know has been an issue because of the play in the secondary that they kind of cleaned up a little bit last week, then that's going to present a lot of problems for the Chargers, who have already let Justin Herbert get hit almost 70 times this season.
And that's kind of the issue here. I remember last year, even with Slater and Alt in the lineup last year, the Steelers really got after him. And that was kind of the
Mm-hmm.
story of that game. I know Herbert had a high ankle and kind of went out, and then they got Taylor Heineke. So it's not the direct comparison. Herbert right now somehow is not injured. Probably to the luck of the gods, he's not injured.
Yeah, Madison Beer is protecting him.
It says courtside nights at the Lakers games.
That's right.
Um, but let's talk about Herbert. I think he is the dynamic force of this game. To be quite honest with you, I think to this point, probably is the best quarterback the Steelers have seen this year. It's either him or Darnold. Um, and so, talk me through kind of what this passing game has looked like. I mean, really, it's a good group of receivers. I mean, you look at McConkey, Allen, Johnston, Gadsden's really come along as a tight end. Um, and so it seems like this passing game is humming, but what has it looked like without Alt in the lineup? Kind of what concepts should they run? What do they try to get it out fast? And what do you expect them to do maybe against a team like the Steelers, who this week Jalen Ramsey is going to be back at safety still. He's going to play free safety. Kyle Duggar's going to be their other safety, which means Brandon Eccles in the slot, Darius Slay, and Joey Porter Jr. on the outside.
Yeah, so without Joe Alt in the lineup, you see a lot more of these sort of sit routes that Herbert throws. The pick six against the Titans is a good example. Alt is in the game for that play, but that's a good example of a concept that they run a lot without Alt on the field, where it's just a quick, like 5 yard sit route to Keenan Allen or Lad McConkey or Gadsden or whoever it might be. They get the ball into the flat a lot with Gadsden, especially. They've tried to get Kamani Vidal going in the passing game a little bit as well in that respect, too. But really, they want to attack the intermediate areas of the field a little bit more. They've done a good job of getting Quentin Johnston more involved, kind of into a rhythm by getting him some almost design touches as like a underneath kind of drag guy. But then as the game goes on, they'll try to build on that a little bit and get Johnston running some of these deeper routes into the intermediate deep areas of the field. He still runs a pretty decent amount of go routes, and so they will give him that opportunity. He's really developed into a much better contested catch receiver than he was coming out of TCU or for the first 2 years of his career. He's over 50% on contested catches this season. And so they will give him some one-on-one opportunities just down the sideline of just, hey, like we're going to ask, the tackles to protect for 3 seconds on this play, and we're just going to throw it up to him and hope he can go make a play for us. Keenan Allen is a machine on third down. It doesn't matter how old he is. It doesn't matter how slow he gets. He's open on third down. He's at the sticks. He's converting to third down. Lad McConkey has been kind of the interesting one for the Chargers this season. It's taken a little bit of time for him to get going. He's struggled just a touch with drops a little bit this year. But really, they want to get him on a lot of those intermediate crossers. And they just haven't had the time to do a lot of that stuff without Alt in the lineup. And so it's kind of affected the way that his route distribution has been. They've adjusted that a little bit because they're starting to phase Keenan Allen out of the game plan if it's not third down a little bit more as the season goes on. You're seeing a lot more of Trey Harris, the second round pick that they took this season. He's playing a lot in one wide receiver sets because he's their best run blocker right now. And so if he's on the field, it is sort of like a key that they're going to run the ball. But they've also gotten him in the mix as a receiver a little bit more over the last few weeks to kind of play off of that tendency, knowing that defenses are going to kind of key in on the run when he comes onto the field. And so McConkey's route distribution has just kind of changed a little bit because Keenan Allen has been on the field so much, and now like it's starting to change a little bit more because Keenan Allen's not on the field as much. And so they're putting McConkey back into the slot a little bit more because Trey Harris is playing on the outside. And so then McConkey gets a little bit more of those like sit route stuff over the middle, like the stuff that he really ate on last season as a rookie. And then Gadsden really like once they throw him a couple of plays in the flat, they'll get him going kind of on the perimeters a little bit. And then as the game goes on, they'll kind of turn some of those flat routes up into wheel routes and get him up the sideline as they kind of like get a feel for what the other team is going to run in coverage, whether they're going to send a linebacker on him, whether they're going to sit in zone or whatever. And so really like as the game goes on, they do want to kind of build into that more like intermediate deep passing areas. But without Alt on the field, they have had to resort a lot more. Like if you go look at the Dolphins game, for example, um, that game they get the quick game going so much more than they had all season, where it's like suddenly they're throwing screens to Quentin Johnson and Trey Harris like on the outside just immediately, like one step drop, throw the screen, get some screens into Gadsden and to Will Dissly at tight end. And so it's a good mix. I think they've been doing a good job of keeping it varied in the pass game, making sure that they're kind of playing off of the tendencies that they've shown so far this season. But they do ultimately want to get into some of those like deeper intermediate throws because like ultimately that's where Justin Herbert's arm strength shines the best, and that's where Justin Herbert as a player shines the best.
Makes complete sense, and I think it will be at least a challenge for the Steelers. I think that, granted, I do think the Steelers did a very nice job against what is a good Colts group too. But
Yeah.
we'll kind of see if they stick to the too high stuff that they did last week. The blitz rate was ratcheted back a lot. I'm kind of interested to see where this goes. The Chargers' run game has also seemingly not gone completely dead with no Najee Harris or Amarian Hampton. Vidal's kind of emerged, which I think is something Mike Tomlin kind of mentioned today. The run game's still going to be something that they're going to have to focus on regardless. But I do want to flip to the defensive side of the football because I think this is an interesting matchup. The Steelers are like quietly actually a pretty league average offense this year and actually above average in some categories. They average 25 points per game. That's certainly nothing to sneeze at. They've put up over 20 points all but one game, which was against the Seahawks. They have the fourth most 3-and-outs in the league, but they're a great red zone offense. They run the ball pretty well. They're able to get quick passing game going. It's kind of worked. It's been very odd, but it has worked. But Alex, kind of talk me through this Chargers defense. Where's it at? How good are they? Because honestly, just look at the box scores. Don't look at the tape. You wouldn't be able to tell. Like there are some games where the box score stuff looks really sterling. There's others where you're like, what is going on with this defense? So talk me through this, where its weaknesses are, where its strengths are.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting matchup from a reputation perspective because you kind of touched on like the Steelers' offense has the reputation as kind of like a well below average unit, but they're playing more like an average offense. And I think the Chargers defense has a reputation because of what they did last year under Jesse Minter during his first year as defensive coordinator as a above average, like well above average, teetering on elite unit. And they've really been an average, below average unit this season. A lot of that is just due to injuries. Khalil Mack missed some time. They're missing a couple of guys up front at defensive tackle. Denzel Perryman has missed some time. Tarheeb Still is going to miss this game probably. He has a sprained MCL, and so he's probably going to be out. Their top corner, but they've really not performed up to expectation so far this season. And I think what you're seeing a lot with the Chargers defense right now is especially against mobile quarterbacks that get out of the pocket and extend plays. They are stretching the pattern match zone that the Chargers love to play on the back end because when you have a quarterback that can get out of the pocket, extend plays, they're making something happen. They're not, their time to throw is getting into the 4 or 5 second range. As the pattern match starts to turn more into man defense, the defense gets stretched thinner and thinner and thinner. And then during the scramble drill, as you get wide receivers coming into other zones or getting into holes in the field, those receivers are now open. And as long as you can make those throws, then you are going to be able to beat this Chargers defense. Now, that doesn't necessarily help the Steelers that much because Aaron
Yep.
Rodgers is 41 years old, and so he's not the kind of mover that he used to be. But I do think that like there's some opportunity for the Steelers there in terms of if they are able to get Rodgers on some like boot action type stuff and get him a little bit like get the pocket moving with him a little bit, there's still some opportunity there. Up front, the run defense has been okay, but not great. Again, they're missing two defensive tackles who are both on IR, Deshaun Hand and Otito Ogbonia, both on IR. Their third round rookie, Jamari Caldwell, has really come along the last few weeks. He's starting to play more and more snaps. He got the most snaps at defensive tackle, even over T.R. Tart, who's been excellent this season. And so they do have two good defensive tackles. I think they've both played well against the run. But really, this Chargers defense has been vulnerable on the ground on the perimeter, especially when Khalil Mack was out. They really struggled to defend on the perimeters of this run defense because, excuse me, the Chargers are playing so much light box stuff where Derwin James is kicked up into the box as effectively a dime linebacker. And so if you were able to get a body on Derwin James and on Deion Henley on the second level, you can get to the perimeter and get out and get to the second level pretty easily against this Chargers defense because there's only six guys in the box and they're playing split safety stuff on the back end. They play cover three at a super high rate. And so the second safety is at the sticks pretty much at 10 yards downfield. It's not quite like the Greg Williams, Jabril Peppers 20 yards back on every play, but that safety is not really part of the equation in run defense the way that they would be like if you're playing more base defense or something like that. And so they have been a little bit vulnerable on the outside running. And then also, like, if you are able to separate from these Chargers DBs, they will give up yards to you. Really, like all of the DBs so far this season, Dante Jackson, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, Benjamin St. Juste when he's been in there, all of them have been really, really good at the catch point. They've been great at the catch point, preventing contested catches. They generate a lot of PBUs, but they don't generate a lot of turnovers. And but all of them have sort of struggled with if you are able to separate from them a little bit, then you can generate some chunk plays by just sort of running by them because if they get beat, then they're beat, right? Because again, with that pattern match defense, as the play goes on, it turns more and more into man. And so there's not necessarily someone always like over the top of them or in the vicinity to kind of make a play once someone gets the ball. And so I think that really plays in the hands of somebody like Calvin Austin for the Steelers, right? Who's more of a separator out of the slot. It may not necessarily be like the biggest DK Metcalf game for the same reason, right? Whereas like DK thrives on more of that contested catch ability, right? And so I think like if you're able to get a little bit more separation, you're able to get to the perimeter a little bit more. Like the Chargers defense will struggle with that stuff a little bit, but really up the middle, the spine of the defense has performed pretty well this season, and so that I would call that a strength.
This is how the Steelers beat the Vikings. They flipped it to the perimeter, used a lot of their toss game, screen game, and that was kind of how it
Yep.
worked. The Steelers have a really expansive rollout game. They do a lot of play action rollout, trying to get guys like Washington and Metcalf and others on the move. And then they also have a big toss series that they run, and they try to get to the perimeter. The Steelers really like their ability to block on the perimeter. They have really good wide receiver blocking between, Metcalf, Skowronek, Rowan Wilson's been pretty good there. And then, of course, they're going to run jumbo tight end stuff. That's what the Steelers are going to do. They're going to run 6-0 line. They're part of that wave right now. And so Chargers are going to have to match size for size. I think that'll be an interesting thing to kind of see if Derwin can be a kind of a force multiplier in that game. I think Derwin is kind of the key to honestly stopping the Steelers' run game. But if the Steelers can run the ball, that's when things get dangerous for teams defensively because Rodgers has the pressure taken off him. The play action game starts to work, and the Steelers can really get chunk plays. If they get their play action game going and can get chunk plays, teams generally start to have a lot of trouble stopping this team. So I guess my next question is, how do the Chargers, do you think, match up against these heavy looks because the Steelers are going to play? I mean, the Steelers obviously top 5 in the league in 12 personnel, top 5 in the league in 13. They run the most jumbo tight end, 6-0 line. It's really 7-0 line because Darnell Washington is in the game. They run super heavy, and Jalen Warren and Kenny Gainwell have just been kind of really working. Really, that Colts game was the first time in, it's been since the Seahawks game where they didn't run the ball well. So kind of talk to me about that matchup and how you see that playing out.
Yeah, I think it is going to be really interesting. As you're talking about it, right? Like with all the heavy personnel that the Steelers play, like the Chargers do not play base defense. Like as much as possible, they avoid getting into base defense. The closest that they get to playing base is they play a three safety look where Derwin is in the box as a third linebacker next to Deion Henley and Denzel Perryman. But like that's not really true. That's still nickel, right? Like that's still not base defense. And obviously, like Derwin has performed very well in that role. He made an All-Pro team last season, doing exactly that. But against a team like the Steelers that's going to have six offensive linemen out there, that's going to run 12, 13 personnel with Darnell Washington out there, Connor Hayward out there. Like I am interested to see if they adjust to that a little bit because the other thing too is like they just don't really have the bodies to play base. Like their third linebacker right now is Troy Dye because Junior Colson is out for the season on IR, has been the entire year. And if any of those guys need a rest and they need to stay in base, like your fourth linebacker is Delshon Phillips, Marlo Wax. Like these are guys that are just on the roster to play special teams right now. Troy Dye is basically on the roster just to play special teams. He's had to play a lot of defense because Perryman has been injured, but he's basically on the roster to just play special teams. And so, I'm interested to see how they're going to match up with that. You know, they've played other teams that run a lot of 12 before, and they kind of just go to that three safety look. But they traded Alohi Gilman to the Ravens a few weeks ago for Odafe Owe. That trade has worked out for them very well. Odafe Owe has 4 sacks for the Chargers in 4 games. But it does also mean that when you go up against a team like this where you need to play those three safety looks, you're down to Derwin and Elijah Molden. And then behind Elijah Molden, it's either going to be Tony Jefferson or RJ Mickens, the 6th rounder that they took this year, because Tony Jefferson is also dealing with an injury because everyone on the Chargers is dealing with an injury. And
God.
so, like, in that respect, right, like Tony Jefferson has played well, but also, like, he was a scouting assistant for the Ravens 2 years ago. Like, and he every week that he plays, he continues to shed that label and say like, okay, you know what, like this guy was a legit NFL player before, he's still a legit NFL player now, he's a serviceable role player for them. But it's still at this point bears repeating like this guy was not playing football 18 months ago. Like he was scouting football 18 months ago. And now it's like, all right, go out there and you're the third safety and you're, face up on Connor Hayward for the entire game. And I don't know exactly how the Chargers are gonna handle a lot of that stuff, right? Because they want to be in nickel, they want to be in dime, they don't want they refuse to let you get them into base. And so they're going to play out of the nickel because that is their base. It's a base nickel defense under Jesse Minter. And so Derwin really is the key, like you said, to stopping this Steelers offense when they go to those heavier looks, because it's just going to be, hey, like Derwin's going to have to be the guy on Pat Fryermuth, Darnell Washington, Connor Hayward, whoever is in there. Derwin is going to have to be the guy like taking on a block against Spencer Anderson and, knifing through the gap to stop a run play or something. Like a lot of the defense is going to be on his shoulders this Sunday. And so I do think like I'm really intrigued to see how the Chargers attack that, because they've played other teams that have utilized 12 personnel before, but none of those teams that they've played this season have utilized it in the ways and as much as the Steelers have. And so it is going to be like a novel matchup for them.
I think it'll be fun. The Colts actually just stayed in nickel and did well, but they also have DeForest Buckner to clog up
Right.
the middle. They have DeForest Buckner. Zaire Franklin did a good job. Kenny Moore is just an absolute hoss of a nickel. Like they have unique personnel. I think gave the Steelers
Right.
trouble. Grover Stewart as just an absolute strong man. Like I like Jamari Caldwell and Taylor Tart, but I'm not sure they're DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart in that respect.
Yeah.
So like I'm interested to see where it goes because the Steelers, the real surprise of the Packers game, although the Steelers defense took the headlines there, was they were able to run on a group that had Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary, Edge Cooper, Quay Walker.
Right.
Like that was the surprise of that game. And so I'm interested to see if they can get back to that. All right, last question. I don't usually ask about special teams, but I have to because this Chargers special teams, I looked at the stats. It is some of the worst special team. It's one of the worst special teams units in football in terms of punt
Yes.
and kick coverage. In the
Yes.
Steelers, since Keyshawn Williams has taken over that return job, Calvin got hurt. Keyshawn came up. He's been really good. Now he has punt return and kick return jobs, and he's been close to breaking one. And I'm not saying he's going to break one against this Chargers special teams, but it certainly looks like it's possible. What in the world is going on with the Chargers special teams units?
They're in the middle of an overhaul. Really, is what's happening. Is a lot of the guys that were key special teamers for them last season are no longer on the team. Nick Neiman and Simi Fehoko both left in free agency over the offseason. Jasir Taylor just got traded to the Jets today for a 2028 conditional 7th rounder. He's their best gunner on punt return. They have Hassan Haskins on injured reserve. Caleb Murphy got cut earlier in the season when they traded for Odafe Owe because they had 5 edge rushers with the Owe trade, and so they cut Caleb Murphy, who was their best special teamer overall. They've replaced a lot of those guys with just undrafted free agents, undrafted rookie free agents. I mentioned Marlo Wax earlier. Nico Reed is an undrafted corner that's been playing a lot of special teams for them. They had to move Tui Pelotu off of special teams for the first half of the season, who played a ton of special teams for them last year, because he's now expected to be the edge 2 on this team because Joey Bosa's in Buffalo. And then Caleb Murphy gets cut and Tuli's back on special teams units now. Um, and now, so it's just a bunch of new personnel. And Dean Leonard is on IR. He might come back for this game, and I think that'll give them a boost a little bit, especially in the gunning department. But it's really just like they're trying to make it work with a bunch of new guys right now. Like they have Justin Aboigbe on kickoff unit. Keandre Lambert Smith has been playing gunner a lot for them. Nico Reed has kind of gotten in the mix there. Dean Leonard, like I said, when he comes back off IR, he'll be back there. But really, it's just been like they're just overhauling this unit in real time. And it feels a lot like they are trying to make do with players that they like the offensive or defensive potential of on special teams rather than having dedicated special teamers. And so I think actually, like this is a big argument on Twitter all the time, right? Of like there are people out there that would never take players just because they have special teams value. Like you have to have upside on offense or defense. And I think if you want to build a team that way, I would direct you to the 2025 Los Angeles Chargers, because at this point, with Jasir Taylor traded, if Dean Leonard doesn't play on Sunday, the Chargers don't really have anyone on the roster that will be on the field on Sunday that is purely on the roster to play special teams outside of the kicker, punter, long snapper. Other than that, like they don't have a dedicated gunner, they don't have a dedicated kickoff guy, they don't have any of that. It's just depth players on offense or defense that are being asked to perform those roles. The closest that they have to that is linebacker Delshon Phillips, who's been okay, but he hasn't been the same caliber as Nick Niemann was as a special teamer for them last season. And so, you combine all of that with like they're playing a lot more traditional units on kickoff coverage that you would play against like the traditional kickoff. But now with the new dynamic kickoff, the personnel has to change a little bit because of the way that the play works now, and the Chargers have been a little bit slow to adjust to that. The punt coverage stuff I think is pretty much just like there's been a couple of times where like J.K. Scott is a very good hang time punter, but there's been a few times where like they've asked him to try to like truly flip the field, and he has the leg to do that. He can boot it 60 yards, but if he does that, he sacrifices a little bit of hang time sometimes. It just doesn't travel the same way, and so like the coverage unit has not been able to get down there quite the same way. And so like on the punt return that Chimere Dike had for the Titans last week, same thing, right? The Chargers are backed up. They asked J.K. Scott, like, okay, we need you to really flip the field here. He really gets into one. It's a 60, 65-yard punt. But by the time DK catches it, the gunner is still 5 yards away from him. And so he's able to make the gunner miss. And then once you make the gunners miss, then it's just about making personal protectors and stuff miss. Those guys are usually bigger players. And so a dynamic returner like DK, you can just maneuver around all those guys, and suddenly you got a lane, it's a touchdown, right? And so, it's been a combination of all of that stuff, but I think the main thing is really just like they're overhauling this unit in real time, and they're trying to make do with guys that like they want on the roster because they're excited about what they might be in the two main phases of the game in a couple of years. But they're not necessarily like great special teamers right now.
Something to watch. I'm telling you, Keyshawn Williams has been close to breaking a few. So I'm watching that. Danny Smith, I'm sure, is going to be chomping his gum looking for
Oh
that.
yeah.
But Katson, thanks for coming on, man. Let them know where they can follow you, watch your stuff, read all your work, all that great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Easiest place to find me is probably just on my Twitter account at Alex Katson, ALEXKATSON. You can also go to my website, alexkatson.com. That has all of my stuff linked pretty quickly there. I write about the Chargers for USA Today's Chargers Wire. I also do a Chargers-specific draft show on the Guilty as Charged podcast YouTube channel. I read about the Washington Huskies for USA Today's Huskies Wire. I'm also a co-owner at Wide Left, which is co-owned by our friends Arif Hassan and Devin Jackson. That's over on Substack, where we do longer form journalism stuff about the sport. And then I'm all over the place. I'm doing all sorts of stuff all the time. So like I said, the easiest way is probably either on Twitter or my website, both of which again are Alex Katson, AlexKatson.
Make sure to check his stuff out. He does great stuff, especially draft season. Katson, in my opinion, is a must follow. Folks, as you know here, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notification bell. You can follow me on Twitter at Farabaugh Make sure to check out the Steelers stuff at PennLive.com/Steelers. Thanks for watching, everybody.